We've all heard how mothers often shrink their biggest dreams, those ambitions they once chased with fire, only to nurture their family's growth, pouring everything into lives that aren't even their own. And dads, they hold back tears and tough emotions to play the strong provider, delaying the care that could heal them, all so that the family stays steady. And then there are students like us who leave behind joy, dreams, and childhood to achieve standards that we did not even set. To us, these aren't choices, they are sacrifices that hit hard. But if all of this is sacrifice, what do we really mean by sacrifice? So when I researched this online, I realized that by definition, sacrifice is giving up something valuable, like time, energy, opportunities, or even parts of yourself for the sake of someone or something else. By that definition, even giving the last chocolate I'm emotionally attached to my friend should count as sacrifice, right? Like, yes, take it, my friend. Take the chocolate that carried my hopes, dreams, and will to live. But here's the truth that we rarely say out loud. Most of what we call sacrifice isn't sacrifice at all. It's compromise, deep internal compromise that is conditioned into us by the societies that depend on our silence. So when I was preparing for this talk, I was absolutely convinced that everything that people gave up was a sacrifice. Every late night, every plan cancelled, every emotion swallowed, sacrifice. I honestly thought people were walking monuments of selflessness. But then one day, my teacher looks at me and asks, "Is everything that you give up truly sacrifice? Every small thing you do, does that count as sacrifice?" And I froze. Because she was right. If sacrifice means giving up something important, don't we do that every single day? Our time is important, our energy is important, our peace is important, our sanity is important. And by that logic, even giving the last slice of pizza should be counted as sacrifice. Because I've honestly grieved pizza harder than some life decisions. But that one question cracked something open. And I started realizing, what if most of what we sacrifice isn't sacrifice at all, but rather compromise? And here's the plot twist. We call it sacrifice because it makes the compromise feel noble. It gives us a socially approved badge for the things that we never truly wanted to give up. It makes the pain feel meaningful, the exhaustion feel justified, and the loss feel honored. But here's the real difference. Sacrifice is a choice. It comes from love, abundance, and intention. And people walk out feeling happy, fulfilled, and connected. But compromise? Compromise is conditioning. And it is based on fear. Fear of disappointing, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as selfish. And it leaves people feeling small, drained, and invisible. But because compromise sounds like losing and all of us want to be those virtual heroes, we prefer sacrifice. We prefer the prettier word to mask the harder truth. And when I look back at my own life, I realize how true this is. All of us make compromises that are stitched together by guilt, expectation, and silence. But where is it that we learned to compromise? How is it that our societies realize that, okay, we should be the ones compromising? Let's zoom out. Across psychology, anthropology, and sociology, there's one idea that consistently shows up. Societies teach people to sacrifice because that's what group survival depended on. Conformation and predictability, on them being cooperated. For thousands of years, we humans have rewarded behaviors that protected a group, like sharing food and resources and maintaining harmony, discouraging actions that threaten this unity. Anthropologists call this socialization. The process by which communities and institutions teach people to behave so that a society stays stable. In evolutionary psychology, this aligns with something called costly signaling theory, which basically means that when you give up something valuable, people read it as a sign that you are loyal and safe to rely on. So, over time, we learned to glorify this act because it kept groups coordinated and predictable. But then, something else happened. As our economies developed, institutions amplified this expectation. Industrialization needed obedient workers. Patriarchy needed compliant caregivers. Schools needed students who wouldn't question outdated metrics, and families needed children who would fulfill roles without protest. So compromise, internal, painful, and personal, became normalized. And sacrifice, it became the PR campaign that made it look noble. And here's the part that stings. We sacrifice not because we're weak, but because the system is brilliantly designed. Sacrifice is wrapped up as morality. People risk being seen as selfish if they do not sacrifice. Sacrifice gives temporary validation. Every good job, every thank you, every you're so reliable trains our brain to keep repeating this behavior. Sacrifice is gendered. Girls are taught to please, boys are taught to be strong, and both learn to compromise. Sacrifice creates our identity. When people realize that their worth is measured by how much they lose, they realize that they can only be measured by what they lose. And sacrifice is normalized way too early. From classrooms to families, the message is be good, be obedient, listen, don't question. Just manage and adjust. This is not sacrifice. This is conditioning. And this conditioning, it doesn't stay inside us. It spills out. Mothers lose economic independence and with it long-term economic security. Fathers carry emotional burdens that turn into stress disorders and chronic illnesses. Students lose creativity and identity that leads to burnout before adulthood. Entire communities stop innovating because people realize dreaming is so difficult. And research from Stanford backs this. It shows that when sacrifices are made out of guilt and obligation, it leads to lower satisfaction and higher emotional distancing. So the issue is not sacrifice itself. It's what drives it. But here's the hopeful part. Change does not need a revolution. It needs awareness. And we can allow the change to happen. First, pause and ask yourself, is this coming from love or from fear? Because we're allowed to choose ourselves. We're allowed to set our limits. We're allowed to rest without apologizing. Or as I like to call it, it's all about not turning into that friend who's basically customer service for everybody else's chaos. Like, hi, you've reached the helpline. Press 1 for drama, press 2 for overthinking, and press 3 if it's the same problem again. We all know that is true. I want to tell you something straight from my heart. All of us here today deserve a world that is not built on sacrifice, a life in which our dreams are not optional, a world where compassion includes us. And maybe, just maybe, the next generation can grow up in a society that values people not for how much they give up, but for how fully they live their lives. Thank you.